Ah, that's where we're ending it. I wonder if there'll be a post-credit. Okay. This is where I can kind of give some thoughts, I guess. At this point. Yeah. We'll start with saying some really positive stuff. This was and similar again to Age of Calamity. This improved on a few things from Tears of the Kingdom. It had more enemy variety. It had, like different elements of various enemies, and them having an elemental weakness, not just something that immediately kills them off. They made Ultra Hand look so much cooler by giving it combat abilities. I like that we got to see more new characters. Tears of the Kingdom did not have very many new characters, and the ones that were new, we didn't get to spend a lot of time with. And so I like that we were spending a lot more time with, all the various sages and kind of the different allies from those different tribes. And Gleeok actually being an enemy but in the Sky Islands that makes it a nightmare to roam around in the sky. Brilliant. That's what he should have been in Tears of the Kingdom. In terms of how this improves on Age of Calamity, the combat is better. The counter system is a lot more fun. Right? I had a lot more fun with the counter system. And bearing in mind I played on the harder difficulty in Age of Calamity as well. I played on the harder difficulty in this game too. This game balances difficulty way better. Giving you like a set number of batteries and health at the start of each level means you're not getting screwed over for using them in previous levels. The apple system in Age of Calamity did not work. The healing system was just a nightmare, and it made the whole game boring, right? It was so irritating. Now, where do I have problems with this game? Again, potential. It is the lost potential that I have a problem with. The weakness that this game and Age of Calamity... Right. This is something I get shat on constantly for, right? Is that when So I've 100%ed every Hyrule Warriors game. Not all the DLC, but I've 100%ed every Hyrule Warriors game. I 100%ed the original on Wii U when it first came out, and 100%ed most of the DLC on that. I played that to death, and I've been able to check my hours on the eShop. I had over 300 hours just on Wii U Hyrule Warriors, right? The combat system on Wii U Hyrule Warriors was not great. And when enemies had a lot of health, it wasn't a lot of fun, right? But what made that game replayable, and what made that game so fun, is even if you fought the exact same enemies in a separate level, the structure of the map and the strategy made that important, right? So you could play the same map with the same enemies, but this time it says, you've got to make sure these two characters stay alive, you've got to make sure you don't lose these two keeps, and you've got to be able to kill this boss that's roaming around the map, right? So you take Twilight Palace, for example. Your job is to kill Zant and Argorok. And Zant is on the back end of the map that's hard to get to. And Argorok is just flying around, right? Just brutalizing your allies, right? And you've got to be able to manage keeps. You've got to be able to spread your army along the whole base. And you do all of that while fighting hard enemies. And the combat system wasn't as good, right? But it was about the strategy. Because you could rush and go and get Zant. But if you're not paying attention to this general that's leading like a whole string of characters, you're going to lose, right? So you need to pay attention to what's going on over here. You need to pay attention to, at the top of the map, if one of your allies are dying, right? Because your allies could lose health. And in this game, if you switch characters, they're going to have permanent health. right? Cool. Just in case we're gonna get a mini cutscene. Make myself nice and small, and then I'll carry on talking. I'll carry on reviewing this in a minute, but we're just gonna watch this just now. Oh, oh, that's so sad. That's very sad. Oh. That's so sweet. Oh, and even a silent princess. That's a money shot. Wallpapers. Age of Calamity had a bit of a problem where the marketing misrepresented what the game was going to be. It stated that you were going to go and see what actually happened in the past, right? And learn more about what happened before they lose. I remember when the demo was announced and we saw the intro to the game, I went on a forum and I made this post entirely positively to say, based on this intro that we see in the demo, I don't think this game is actually the backstory to Breath of the Wild. I think it's going to be an alternate timeline where characters from the future are gonna come back, right? And we're gonna have all of these characters from Breath of the Wild time travel and be playable, right? And it's gonna be an alternate timeline. The fact that I said that I thought it was gonna be like, oh look, this is how they're gonna make something different with the game. I thought I was being positive. So many people saw me as a hate poster that I then got had my post. I had so many comments, yeah, like mad at me for suggesting Age of Calamity wouldn't be the true backstory to to Breath of the Wild. And I said that because you see in the demo for Age of Calamity when it came out, they show the tapestry from Breath of the Wild, but add an extra champion on each thing. And I went and immediately posted online when the demo came out saying that. Pissed so many people off. I wasn't angry at the game for doing something different, but purely pointing out that got me so much hate. Where I think Nintendo fucked up is saying to their fans it would be this. Because Nintendo, and especially Zelda fans, take everything as it's said, right? And if you suggest that what they're saying isn't true, they will be pissed at you, right? So if Nintendo come out and market Age of Calamity as, this is the true backstory to Breath of the Wild, and you go, oh, based on this, I think we're going to actually have something different. Hatred. Right? You're a hater. You hate Zelda. Get out, right? I ended up being right. Fine. But the problem was that they were marketing it still as the true backstory. And I remember, if you know like the Nintendo treehouses they do, I remember in the Nintendo treehouse for Age of Calamity, one of the people there said, oh, you're going to find out so many more backstory things, like you're going to learn more about the relationship between Urbosa and Zelda's mother. Cool. That's something that's mentioned in Breath of the Wild, but learning about that is amazing. That wasn't in the game. It was not in the game. Right? And I think that was a problem. That they were kind of suggesting that this was going to help you learn more about Breath of the Wild's actual backstory and lore. But and I'm sorry, it's not consistent with it. Right? It's not actually consistent with what happened. Even with the changes. B, it makes characters, especially Zelda and Impa, stupid. because the fact that, you know, Tears of the Kingdom does actually give a lot about Breath of the Wild. So I will say that. Anyway, but Zelda and Impa are made to be stupid, because the whole point of Breath of the Wild's backstory is they didn't know Guardians could be corrupted. That's why they lose. Right? In an Age of Calamity, they are shown that could happen and still go through the same plan anyway. And the only reason they don't fail is because characters from the future come back. I didn't like that. So that's kind of why I didn't like Age of Calamity's story. I wasn't mad that it wasn't, you know, the true backstory. I mean, I guess it was, because it should have been the true backstory. But at the end of the day, it was fan fiction. Right? Now, this is the bit where I'm going to piss people off about this game. They've done something similar. Because, yes, this is true and canon to the backstory of Tears of the Kingdom, but it isn't the backstory. Because this game gives you less than what Tears of the Kingdom's memories does. Right? There are some cutscenes and overlap, but this game gives you less. And it was like I was mentioning earlier, Rauru has that moment where he sees Sonia's kind of personality through Zelda, right? And it's a nice moment where it's meant to be him coming to terms with his grief and knowing that you know, Sonia's teachings and her love for her people lives on through Zelda tens of thousands of years in the future, right? At least that's what I think they're hinting at. They're hinting at the fact that Rauru knows that Sonia's kind of legacy and her love for Hyrule tens of thousands of years later will live on through Zelda, because you can see that through her. That's a lovely moment. The problem is, it's not earned, and it's not as impactful, because we do not see him grieve. Right? They go straight from Sonia being murdered into, oh, we're into the war. We do not see more of Raru's personality, and more of what Rauru feels and struggles with after losing his wife. I felt like we saw more of that in Tears of the Kingdom's backstory. And so it's a similar thing to Age of Calamity, but not the same. This is canon, right? This is is within the actual backstory. But we're, again, not seeing the things we wanted to see and the character relationships we wanted to see, right? We don't get much from Zelda. We don't see her at any point in this game realize that this is the era that leads up to Rauru, that she knows what's going to happen, right? Zelda knows what's going to happen. We don't see that realization. That's completely skipped over. And I get why, because this game is so made just for people who already know the backstory, right? But it doesn't really bother with the in-between very much. The in-between only exists in the gameplay and the actual doing of things. The cutscenes do not give you any extra, right? So, my main feeling about this game, in a similar way to you can appreciate Age of Calamity if you look at it as, oh, this is a, you know, alternate timeline, fun fanfiction story. Like, what if they won? This game is not so much learning more of what happened in the ancient Hyrule. This is Calamo and the Night Construct's story during this time. That's what this game is. And I was starting to get that feeling because we were seeing just more and more of the Construct and Calamo than anything else, right? They were prioritizing Calamo and the Night Construct's relationship over Rauru grieving for his wife, right? And the ending of this game proved that. Because the final boss wasn't even Ganondorf, right? Ganondorf, you don't even actually get to kill him. You get towards the end of the fight and then just lose, right? He jumps away and then you lose. And they were showing the final fight, which was against the Robot Darkling, I'm still gonna call him that. That fight was shown to be as important a moment as Rauru sealing Ganondorf away. Not in the general history of Tears of the Kingdom's ancient history or whatever, but in terms of this game. In terms of this game, Calamo's and the Night Construct's fight against the Evil Construct is the important conclusion, right? And even in the ending, we don't see Zelda talking about unification, we don't see Zelda talking to Minoru, we don't get anything other than seeing the tapestry being made, not the tapestry, murals being made. But the focus is on Calamo planting his roots. Okay? This game doesn't start with Zelda entering this period of history. It doesn't start with Link and Zelda, you know. Yeah, there's like the 6-month time jump and everything, you know. This game does not. If this game was truly, oh, let's really expand the backstory of the ancient history, then they would have started this, kind of in the same area of Tears of the Kingdom, right? Because in Tears of the Kingdom, when Ganondorf's unleashed, we follow everything from Link's perspective, right? If this game was going to be a better telling of the ancient history, we would have then had the same thing where we open with Ganondorf being released and blowing everything up, and then followed everything from Zelda's perspective, right? That doesn't happen. This game opens with Calamo bringing the Knight's Construct to life, right? Maybe it doesn't matter that they don't go so much into Rauru's character and don't go much into Zelda's character, because Tears of the Kingdom covers most of that. This game is trying to tell a story about different characters during this time period. So you might be playing as Rauru, and you might be playing as Zelda, and you might be doing the battles that they did. But this game begins and ends with the life of the Night Construct. Right? It's just telling a story of other characters during this war. It's their story. Right? So if you look at this game that way, this is much more enjoyable. But here again is my problem. Why did they not market it like that? Right? Because you don't do anything other than piss people off or cause arguments. The same with Age of Calamity, right? Because if you sold Age of Calamity as what it was, people wouldn't have been angry, right? If you sold Age of Calamity of, oh, this story is about this mini guardian that tries to stop them from losing the war, right? Because that's what this game is, right? So even if you advertise this game as that, and it makes people go, I don't want that, it's better to do that and market the game as what it is than to wait for people to find out that this game is about a Korok and a Construct. Because it starts and ends with them, you know? And we see more of them than any of the other characters. And we focus on their entire story and skip so many details and have time jumps and everything. We barely find out anything about Ganondorf. We see so little of him. And I was expecting, if this was going to be just the true just the backstory of the ancient Hyrule, we would have had a playable Ganondorf, right? Because in the original Hyrule Warriors, playable Ganondorf is important. Like, you spend so much of the game trying to win a war, right? Like, multiple levels. Then you switch to Ganondorf, just fuck everything up, right? You're forced to play as Ganondorf and ruin everything. So that you then have to go back as Link and Zelda and win again. Because Ganondorf's taken over. And you had to play that. You had to do that to carry on the game. That was great. And they could have done something similar here. Right? Because how emotionally impactful would that be to force the player to play as Ganondorf and cause this tragedy and cause this series of events through the perspective of Ganondorf? to then have to play, you know, as Raru and his army and push back. You know, that's how it would have been done if that was what this story was. But again, it's not. It's about Calamo and the Nyx construct. You know? Yeah, exactly. We see nothing of Ganondorf. We see Koumei and Katake. They're introduced, and they're the ones that have the Shades magic and whatever, I think. And then they're just out of the picture. They run away, and then we never see them again. Sonya dies, and Raru never talks about it. Right? Zelda realizes that Ganondorf might be the Ganondorf she saw, and never talks about it. Right? All of these things that if the story was about these characters, we would see. Right? We would see the conversations happening. We would see how the characters felt about these various things. This game isn't about them. Right? I mean, if it's supposed to be about them, it does a bad job. That's what I'm saying. If this is about the characters from the ancient history of Hyrule, it's doing a bad job of telling that. But if you look at this game as, no, this is about Alamo's perspective during the war. It's about a little Korok's time and journey of trying to plant roots and getting caught up in a war. If that's how you then look at this game, the game is better. Yeah? If that makes sense. Because this just does so much that it just never, at the start of the game, that it just doesn't carry on with. Right? And that's something that I enjoyed about the original Hyrule Warriors. And I was surprised they didn't do it here. I was really I would have put money down that you would have to play as Ganondorf and win some fights, and then the player then ends up causing Sonya's death. That would have been crazy. Anyway, that's how I feel about this story, though. If you look at this story as a deeper, a deeper telling of the ancient history, it's not great. And it starts giving you hints of things that are interesting that you'd like to learn about, but then it doesn't actually go through with them. Right, so on that front, it's not great. If you look at this as, oh, this is the story of a Korok and his companion during the imprisoning war, then we've got something really interesting. Right? Then we've got a really interesting story. In terms of the strategy, like I was saying earlier, this game missed out on doing that. You know? Every single main mission level was kill this enemy, kill this enemy, kill this enemy, boss. And then every side mission, and as we saw earlier, I did every single one of them. They were all, here's 4, maybe 5 enemies. Kill them all. And it was 109 side missions that were all the same thing. Yeah, maybe 111. I didn't get the last 2 recruitment ones, but around just slightly over 100 missions of killing the same enemies again and again and again. Right? So by the time you get to the final level, you're just like, I've done about 70 of this exact fight. So, when I say that I prefer, gameplay-wise, the first Hyrule Warriors, this is from someone that is now pretty much almost this one, but has 100%ed every Hyrule Warriors, and played over 300 hours of the original Hyrule Warriors on Wii U. I prefer the original one purely for the strategy. It is more replayable because levels will feel different, because you have to look at the map, you have to strategize, you have to think about what's going on. This game you don't. It never matters. None of that ever matters. And it's unfortunate because those systems exist in the game. Right? What part that I said is funny? But yeah, those systems exist in the game. Oh yeah, yeah, it is. But it's annoying that this game has figured out the one-on-one combat in a Warriors game so well. And I think in general, because I played a few, this is my favorite Warriors combat, right? And they've really, really narrowed down how to make it fun, while also having all the other smaller enemies around. But why get rid of the strategy? Because you instantly make this game way more fun and way more replayable, right? You just have to make a bit more effort in the level design. But you could even copy the level, like the level design of the original Hyrule Warriors. You could have the same missions and the same strategy. Is this that different to Age of Calamity? Because one is canon, and this one and Age of Calamity wasn't. But at the end of the day, both of them don't really give you more details about the backstory, right? Because this existed in it, but they added in new characters and gave us some kind of excuse at the end of why we don't know about them in Tears of the Kingdom. But, you know, this is about a tree. Right? This is about a tree that exists in Tears of the Kingdom. That you can go inside, that's huge. And it's the story of that little tree. And it's the story of a little Korok's journey during the biggest war in this Hyrule's history. Right? And is that not nice? Right? That's a nice idea. The problem is, these Warriors games, you can't look at them as, oh, I should play them to learn more of the backstory of these other games. They're Warriors games. They're set in these time periods, right? So you see characters you know, and they can reuse assets. But we can't... Yeah. This game had the same looking maps over and over again. I really don't know what happened. And like the map design in this was so linear. But and also it just didn't look tens of thousands of years different. Right? And I've been talking for the past like hour about this. About looking at the Zelda series and Zelda games as a whole, about what they are, not what they're not. And for this game, don't look... You know, I was irritated that there are so many things it missed out on, and it didn't talk about, and it didn't explore certain relationships, certain characters, and there is something sad about that. But again, look at what it is, not what it isn't. And what this is a sweet story about a Korok. A little Korok on his own journey during the Imprisoning War. It's not what this game is marketed as, right? It's not what you'd expect it to be about, but that's what it is, right? And if you kind of accept that, it's an enjoyable story, right? It is, but you have to accept that that's what this is. If you're looking for more on Rauru and how he deals with his grief, you're not going to get that. If you're looking at Zelda and more of how she sees the world of Hyrule in this time period, you're not going to get that. If you're looking at, you know, a bit more of the sage's personalities, you'll get some of that. Like they did the Gerudo stuff well with RD. But this game starts and ends with the Korok and its companion. Over a you know, however long the Imprisoning War goes on for. That's how the story begins and that's how it ends. Right? So if you look at this game as, oh, it's another Warriors game with similar gameplay to Age of Calamity, but it's from the perspective of a little Korok during this time period, right? That can be super appealing. But that has to be something you're interested in. You have to care about this world enough seeing it from the perspective of another little character, and you know how many characters' stories are involved in this world of Hyrule, then that's something enjoyable. But yeah, I think the combat's better than Age of Calamity. Is it better enough that it will make you enjoy it if you didn't enjoy Age of Calamity? No. If you don't enjoy Age of Calamity at all, gameplay wise, this won't be that much better, you know. Honestly, I if you prefer Age of Calamity to the original Hyrule Warriors, fair enough. But I think so many of the people that defend Age of Calamity from the criticisms don't I don't feel like they completed Hyrule Warriors. I don't. The original. Because how can you play through that whole game and not realize how much strategy and how much actual gameplay mechanics they removed? It's impossible to miss. Right? It's impossible to miss. So I don't feel like a lot of people that defend Age of Calamity actually play the original Hyrule Warriors properly. At least not when it came out. But it's okay to not enjoy the original Hyrule Warriors because the one-on-one combat in that is boring. You know, relatively boring. The combos are more about wave clear. But then again, this game has so many different combos for so many different characters, but they don't mean anything because every character's got one efficient combo for dealing with one-on-one. Because wave clear doesn't matter. Right? These characters are built for a different game, is what it feels like. This game begs for the original Hyrule Warriors style strategy and wave clear. It would just be... The game would just be 10 times better if it had that in there. And I really don't understand why it's not. You know? I really, really, really don't get it. But... oh well. It is what it is. So I just love talking about Zelda. I think I'll use the second channel more for these just kind of conversations about Zelda. That's what I want. That's what I want this channel to be about more. So I want to be able to have conversations about Zelda where everyone can have different opinions. And we can appreciate Zelda games individually as well as the series as a collective. So yeah, we'll be doing a lot more of this. This has been great. So thank you very much. I'll see you guys very soon.